Hi, and welcome to more mysterious recipes with me and her.
Hi everyone!
So today, as promised in our last video, we are going to be doing another recipe from 7 Keys. And, of course, again, as we figured, we're going to be doing a latte, or at least some sort of coffee drink. We're still debating on which coffee drink to do. But we're going to be doing a coffee and a pastry from the cafe. Now the pastry we had to debate for a while. We were a little torn on which one to do. Personally, I was thinking that these strawberry tarts looked really cute, but when it came down to it, we decided to do one of the ones that were listed on the menu because a lot of the pastries that you see around the cafe are not actually listed on the menu, so I guess those were just specials of the day. So which one did we decide to do?
We decided to go with the pistachio cake.
We think it'll be really good.
She did a little research on Czech pistachio cakes.
Literally, I went on Google Translate and I wrote pistachio cake recipe. I translated that to Czech, and then I searched, which, I mean, I'm sure you could find a similar recipe on American internet, but most of the pistachio cake recipes that were coming up searching just in English were just like some sort of regular cake with a pistachio pudding based cream layer, which sounded good, but I felt like we could make it better. So after searching pistachio cake recipe in Czech, I compared a few different recipes and created a bit of a mishmash, and this one is going to be a fairly simple cake that has pistachio in it, but then we're also going to make the pistachio cream. We're not going to make a box pistachio pudding for the cream. We're going to make like a whipped cream based fluffy cream that also has pistachio in it to frost. And the cream, we actually do need to go ahead and start first,
So
because that needs time to chill.
here is our lovely recipe.
So the cream, the recipes that we're basing this off of do recommend letting it chill for several hours so it's nice and cold before you put your cake together. So we're gonna start that first.
Started on that.
So what we need, first of all, is we're gonna take 4 cups of heavy cream, heavy whipping cream. We are going to use the full 4 cups, but we're gonna set half a cup of that aside with some unflavored gelatin powder, and that's going to help our cream frosting stabilize it more, since we're basically frosting this whole cake with whipped cream. So we're going to take a small bowl and set aside about a half a cup of the cream with about 2 teaspoons of the gelatin powder. We're just going to sprinkle that on top so it can be softening up. The packet has just a tiny bit over 2 teaspoons, so we'll go ahead and put the whole packet rather than waste that little bit. We're just going to set that aside, let that absorb, and in the meantime we're going to take the remaining cream and we're going to get that heating on the stove, no higher than medium heat because we don't want to scorch it, but we want to heat this until it starts steaming.
So we're going to put 3.5 cups into the pot.
Alright, that's on the stove. That's going to take a few minutes to heat up to steaming. So in the meantime, we are also going to be doing some white chocolate in this frosting. So it's going to be basically a whipped cream pistachio white chocolate fluff. For that, you're going to need 2 cups of white chocolate. And in this case, I don't recommend getting white baking chips because if you look at the ingredient list on those, a lot of white baking chips do not actually have any cocoa butter in them. They're usually just palm kernel oil based. You're going to want to get white chocolate bars because if you look on the back of these, they'll have cocoa butter listed usually as the second ingredient after the sugar, and we want that chocolate in there. So we're just going to take, I'm guessing this will be right about 2 cups with 4 bars because those are 4 ounces apiece. Well, we can measure it out just to be sure, but we're just going to cut these into about chocolate chip size pieces so that it'll melt easier when we're ready for it. ours is just a little over 2 cups. We'll set aside that last little bit of chocolate and we might use that as a garnish or for something else later. And the gelatin is starting to absorb slowly, but it is rather slow, so I'm just gonna give it a little stir just to let it sink down into the cream. We need to do one other thing while the cream is heating, which is the pistachios for the cream. So for that, you're gonna, if you can get your hands on pistachio paste, great, get it. We were not gonna be able to get our hands on it without ordering some, and that wouldn't have been here by today. So we bought some unsalted pistachios, and these were not shelled. We went ahead and shelled them up last night just in advance because we weren't sure how long that was gonna take. But if you can't find pistachio paste, you're gonna need either some unsalted pistachios or another backup item if you cannot find unsalted ones locally, but for some reason your store has a nice like peanut butter aisle. We've also got this pistachio butter that we may or may not put in there. And this is just ground pistachios with a little bit of salt, not much. And this one also has walnut oil in it. Anyway, we bought 2 10-ounce bags of unsalted pistachios. And it's definitely a lot less now that the shells are off, so let's see how much this makes. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take these, we're gonna put just a few aside for at the end. We're just gonna chop up a few to garnish the cake with, but we're gonna take most of these and grind them in a blender until they're smooth, as smooth and close to a proper pistachio paste as we can get them.
So we have ground up the pistachios. It's more like a pistachio flour right now.
Yeah, and we want it to be a little bit smoother, so in this case, let's just add a spoonful of the pistachio paste.
It's got a little bit of moisture.
But it's not that smooth. We want it a little smoother than this. So let's add like probably a couple tablespoons of the pistachio butter. We'll do a little at a time just so this has a little bit of oils, a little bit of moisture to work with since we don't have pistachio paste. And we're very much approximating our stuff today. We're getting there. It is still fairly thick, so I think we're gonna need about a 1/4 cup of pistachio butter when it comes down to it to get this down to a smoother consistency. Also, provided that you can't find pistachio paste and you're making your pistachio paste like this, give your pistachio butter a little taste first and make sure it's not a super salty one.
Oh my word.
Oh,
It's smoking. That's never a good sign.
no. Needed.
Your blender may not appreciate this process. Ours is now smoking.
A food processor might work better in this case. Either way, this is looking a bit better. That's definitely smoother
Ew,
now.
don't put your hand in it.
I'm taking my hand out, but it's more like a soft clay now as far as texture goes, and I think that's going to be a good texture for our cream and our cake. So we're going to set this aside and get ready to work on our cream again in a minute.
Our cream is now getting hot.
We are going to measure our pistachios before we mix up the cream and just find out how much we ended up with at this point, so we know how much we can use in the cream, how much we can use in the cake. So we're going to put those 2 cups of chocolate back in the bowl we need for our cream, and let's just measure out
Can I add
this
the cream?
paste. Well, just set it off the heat for the moment.
So we measured out our pistachio paste and we have about a cup and a half.
Our cream is hot. We're gonna take that off the heat. And we are going to mix in the softened gelatin so that that dissolves before we mix up our frosting. And I'm gonna set aside half a cup of the pistachio paste for this cream here. And we're gonna go ahead and put about a tablespoon of this in with the chopped up chocolate. We're not gonna put the whole thing at once because this is very thick. We want this to blend smoothly. So just scoop that off the camera.
We're just going to try to mix it into
We're gonna add about a tablespoon of the pistachio to the chocolate for starting. I think you're gonna take your hand. And then we're gonna pour our hot cream over the chocolate. This is why we need it to be hot, because we need it to go ahead and start melting it. This is going to be fairly thin at the moment because it is mostly cream, but since we're using heavy cream, we're going to whip this later once it's cooled off. So at this point, your chocolate should be melting nicely in there, and you can whisk it till it's smooth. See how that pistachio paste is a lot more separated? We're going to want to whisk that in. And then while she's whisking, I'm going to add the rest of this half cup of pistachio paste a little at a time. Not the whole thing at once because it's going to kind of create a blob in there, which we don't want. Now we're going to take some plastic wrap and we're going to press that down to the surface of the cream so that when we chill it, it doesn't form a skin on top that will be gross texturally. We now have our nice large bowl of pistachio infused white chocolate cream. We're going to put that in the fridge until it's cold. It's going to need several hours, or you can do this the day before and let it sit overnight. We don't have overnight, so we're going to give it a few hours in the fridge until it's cold. So rather than cover this pistachio paste up and set it aside, we're going to go ahead and start the cake. So first of all, I'm going to get the oven preheating to 350 degrees. We went ahead and blended all of our pistachios down at the same time, so we don't have to do that now for the cake. Yes. We are going to go ahead and mix up our dry ingredients. We need 3 cups of flour in our bowl. And then we need a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda. Our butter is still a little softening, but I'm going to put it in the microwave for like 20 seconds just to finish softening it up. We're going to need 1 cup of butter, so 2 sticks. Alright, we need a cup and a half of sugar added in there.
Sugar!
Sugar! For the eggs, we need 4 eggs total. We're going to use 1 whole egg, and then we're going to use just the whites from the other 3 eggs. We also are going to need to add some milk. How much milk is it? 1 cup of milk. We're gonna add our remaining ground pistachios, which is about a cup's worth of pistachio paste. If you're using pre-made pistachio paste, you're not going to need as much of it in the cake batter. The recipes I was looking at, I think they used about 1/3 of a cup of pre-made pistachio paste, and that's probably going to be a little more smoother, a little more concentrated. Our butter is re-solidifying now that we added our cold milk, so if you're seeing some weird look on the overhead angle, that's what that is. If your milk isn't cold when you add it, it's not going to harden back up so much like that. It'll look a little more aesthetic. A little more aesthetically pleasing. But we're going for flavor, not looks. We're also going to add 1/2 cup of sour cream. Lastly, for our liquid ingredients, we're also going to add a teaspoon each of vanilla extract and almond extract. Gonna add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients, and we're gonna stir that until it's smooth, but we don't want to overbeat this. Let's get our cake pans ready. We're gonna oil and flour these cake pans. That made so much batter, honestly.
I might need 3.
We're not sure, we might need 3 pans. All right, so we're gonna start off with 2 and maybe go to 1/3. We're gonna go the sprayed, floured, and then the batter put in them. These smell so good already. They're not even baked yet. But yeah, 2 pans ended up working surprisingly well. I wish you guys could smell
We're
it.
gonna pop these in the oven for...
Let's start off with 35 minutes, and definitely check it after about 35. You're gonna wanna cook this until, of course, it's cooked through and it's starting to just slightly pull away from the side. Thank you. So let's talk about
caramel.
We don't know for sure which coffee recipe we want to do yet, but we wanted to use one of the flavored syrups, and we both love caramel, so we figured we'd do a caramel syrup for whichever drink we do.
Also the easiest to make.
Well, I mean, vanilla would be super easy too, but yeah, it's...
Caramel's a bit more exciting than vanilla.
So I just pulled up a very basic caramel syrup recipe that we're just going to use for reference. Homemade caramel simple syrup recipe from forkinthe.kitchen.com. I will try to remember to put the link down below, but it's literally just called homemade caramel simple syrup from forkinthe.kitchen.com. And this is a 3-ingredient recipe. It's super easy to do. So we are going to put 3/4 of a cup of sugar with half a cup of water in a saucepan and heat that over medium-high heat until it comes to a boil. Once it boils, we're gonna let that sugar completely dissolve. That's gonna take a few minutes. Alright, so the coffee syrup has come to a boil now. We're going to cut that heat down to about medium heat, and then we're going to just keep it on a low boil for about 15 to 18 minutes until a light golden amber color.
Look how neat.
He is very needy right now. If you're missing Sharon, she's sitting on the floor with her child right now.
Ew, he's drooling on me.
That's because he's happy and he loves you. And it says you don't have to stir it regularly, but you do want to like at least switch the pot every once in a while. This is what the in-between shooting generally looks like, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Sitting on the floor with a phone and a cat. Hello, sir. We're going to carefully stir in the remaining half cup of hot water. And then we're going to stir in a half teaspoon of vanilla extract. So our caramel sauce, I believe, is done at this point. We're going to just set that aside until we are ready for our coffees.
So it looks like 40 minutes is going to be our ideal time. I think our stove runs a little bit lower temperature. So
Definitely start off at the 35 and go from there. You can add more time, but you don't want to overbake it.
yeah, but you can't take it off. All right, we are going to leave these here to cool for a little bit.
So this is what our cakes look like out of the oven, freshly baked. We've got a little bit of goldening on top, but not too much. Just holding its shape nicely, and that toothpick
How long
came
will you
out
let this
clean.
cool?
Well, our cream still needs to cool for at least another hour and a half. We need that to be cold, so we're just gonna let these cool in the pan for probably about at least half an hour before we take it out of the pan and just let it cool on the counter.
See you in a bit. All right,
We're
so
back.
It's been probably about 2 hours.
2.5 hours or so. We are crossing our fingers that the cream has had time to really chill, but we're also running out of time before we have to go do some other things today. So it's gonna have to work. So the frosting definitely still has to chill some more. We're just gonna have to go do our other things and then come back and finish feeding it later because it is not cold enough for it to be setting up just yet. So we're gonna put it back in the fridge for at least another hour. It really depends on what time we get done doing other things, and then we're gonna come back and beat it some more. But right now we don't want to overbeat the cream any more than we have to. All right, we're back. And this cake has definitely been a bit of a learning curve. If you try to make this one at home, learn from our bit of a rush schedule. Definitely let your cream chill for at least 4 or 5 hours minimum, ideally overnight, because it started trying to separate a bit because it wasn't cold enough. So it's thick enough to frost the cake now, but it
Looks a bit weird texture.
it's not as smooth as it could be. So definitely, if you want a prettier cake, give it that overnight chill time. However, moving on. Once we have our cake assembled, we're gonna move on to the coffee, but that's not gonna take super long.
That won't take but a minute.
So when you're watching this, just pretend that we gave it that overnight chill time and that we've got a nice smooth cream here.
The frosting is not right.
It did not set up properly since it started trying to separate. Let's just not frost the sides and just do the centers. This is not working well.
Don't look at the cake. Jerk. She's laughing at us.
So, probably our ugliest recipe to date, just because we didn't have the time to do this properly.
That was not the problem. I think there's a problem with the recipe.
I guarantee you I could get this frosting right if I took more time with it. As it's sitting at room temp, it's also softening back up. This was a lot more set when we took it out of the fridge, but see, it's already
I think it
right
needed
off
more
the spoon.
gelatin or something, because if it softens up that fast, it's not right.
I think next time I would ignore what the recipes I was looking at say and put the gelatin instead in the cream on the last few minutes on the stove to make sure it really fully breaks down. Also, the longer this cake sits out, the more it's thawed.
All right.
Do we even want to post this video at this point?
I mean, we made a whole cake.
We already did the other frosting. It did not work out. We're using what we have on hand at the moment. We've got about a cup's worth of heavy cream. We're going to beat that into whipped cream. Now I've got that whipped cream. We're gonna add just about a tablespoon or so of the pistachio butter. We're gonna start just a little at a time. We just wanna add a little bit of pistachio flavor. Also, our cake is split down the middle. Another plate. And this is why they only have the pistachio cake on the menu. They didn't have it on anyone's table. Defrosted the top layer of cake.
That's why you don't put your cake upside down. It breaks.
Yeah, well, yeah, this frosting wasn't stable enough to support it. So regardless if this didn't go as planned, we're still gonna salvage this. It's still gonna be good. And not everyone can get everything right all the time, especially with a time crunch. It really just looks now like someone took a cake and broke it in half. We've got our remaining pistachios that we saved earlier that we chopped up. We're just gonna throw some of those on top for a little bit of garnish. Some of this white chocolate from earlier, I'm just gonna chop some of that a little bit finer too, so we still get all of our base flavors.
The last thing we did that messed us up so much like this was cherry pie.
And that one we did make several different times before we
I don't think y'all
put
got
up
to
the final
experience
video.
it. We had to eat cherry pie 4 times in the same week.
However, I'm pretty sure
Never eat cherry pie again.
if we do this cake one more time, that we'll get it right the second time. So our cake can go in the fridge while we make our coffee, but it's already looking a lot better. Let's get a little closer up angle.
Frou-frou. You can't show your face.
Let's pretend that the other side of the cake exists. Doesn't that look cute? Doesn't that look tasty? We got a little
We need to put it on a clean plate.
we'll put the slices on a clean plate. Right now this is going in the fridge. Moving on to the coffee.
So are we doing a
Which one did we
latte
decide
or
on?
a caramel macchiato?
We are doing one with caramel, which limits our options.
We can either do a latte or a caramel
Where's the
macchiato, or we could do both. We can make one of each. Really depends on what we want.
At this point, let's probably just do one coffee today, one type of coffee. Really, the caramel macchiato is the only one that expressly calls for the caramel syrup, unless we do another and add to it. So let's plan to do that. So the caramel macchiato, we're gonna switch our angle over here where we have the coffee machine.
Is the caramel macchiato
I believe it calls for the doppio level of...
Okay, so we're doing a double shot of espresso, which is perfect. That's already what I have in here. Press your grinds down. I don't have the fancy brush or anything. We're going to pop this in here. Put the cup down here. And our light is stopped blinking. It's solid. Well, our machine likes to be temperamental sometimes.
So how are we feeling about today's video?
Dejected. I mean, did you show them the vomit cake? That's what it looks like. We're doing 2 shots of espresso, and it's going to work now. We're going to do that again.
All right, so repeating our process. Double portion of espresso. Tamp down in the little cup. Moving on to the recipe, what do we need to do next? We've got our doppio portions of espresso.
In the game, you mix your caramel into your coffee. I prefer mixing the caramel into the milk. It just gets the flavor better.
Well, we'll do the game version. We can start with a spoon at the end.
I disagree with that. I've always been told to mix your syrup into your milk because you want your cream to be sweet, especially in a macchiato. I mean, it won't hurt if I put the caramel in there.
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't accept the rest of the drink in the mini game if you did it that way. We're messing everything else up today. Why don't we mess up that coffee too?
There we go. That's the spirit, Emily. Okay, I'm gonna put about, I don't know. How sweet do you want it?
We can add more sweetness to taste, so.
1 spoon to start.
Okay.
And click our little steam button to get our steamer heating up. I should have already done that. And we're going to spray this out first before we use it. It always has a lot of water in it when you first start it. There you go. And gets the mainstream out. And you're just going to submerge it into your milk. Tilt your pitcher slightly. And then just turn your nozzle on the side. Just cut it off when the metal starts to burn your hand.
Excellent tip.
Alright, so we've got our espresso and we're going to add our cream. Sadly, we have a cheaper
Steamed milk.
or steamed milk. Sadly, we have a cheaper espresso machine, so it doesn't really make frothy enough that we can do coffee art. So sadly, we won't be doing any coffee art as the game has.
Well, not all of the drinks have coffee art anyway.
Your slight bit of foam on top.
Yeah.
Do some splashes. Ta-da!
Oh, very pretty.
What does it look
Which
like?
design is this?
That's when they let you freehand it in the game.
So I do know that I want to add a little more caramel syrup to my coffee since we're having it with cake. So I'm going to put another spoon in there of that.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to try the coffee first before I try
You want
the
your cake, honey bun?
while my taste buds are still fresh.
Sounds good. Alright, you ready to try?
Yes. Moving on to the cake.
It's very almondy.
But fairly pistachio-y too. So while the frosting was definitely a strong learning curve, the cake itself is great. Just very moist. It's definitely a little more of a denser cake, which I like, but if you like more of a fluffy cake, it's not really that.
I'm going to say, she may disagree with me. Save yourself the heartache and just do whipped cream frosting. It was too much.
And the whipped cream frosting, it's up to you if you want to add sugar to that or not. Since it's a lighter layer of frosting and the cake is already sweet enough, you don't have to sweeten that. I do like the whipped cream frosting with it. I wanted like a very light and fluffy frosting anyway.
Well, then you picked the wrong recipe, honey.
Well, that's why I picked one that was such a heavy cream base. Because the plan was to have it more lightly beaten and fluffy and whipped. You do still get some
Okay,
white chocolate
delicious.
flavor this way from the white chocolate sprinkles on top, and you could definitely sprinkle extra shaved white chocolate in the middle layer between the two layers of cake to get some extra white chocolate flavor in there without having to deal with the whole melting chocolate, and it would be very tasty. I think that would be a lot easier. Or you could skip the whole headache and just do like a basic cream cheese frosting, and that would be great too. Really, as long as the cake itself is pistachio, you can do whatever you want for the frosting.
I think it's a child approved.
The niece approves. So while this was definitely one of our more uncooperative recipes, I still like it a lot. It's still really good.
It's definitely not a pistachio pudding cake, like
No.
intended.
But I didn't really want to do a pistachio pudding and like base, because most of the pistachio pudding cakes just use like the box pistachio mix, and I wanted to do something that was fresher and more natural flavored. Something that you just straight up feel like you're eating pistachios. Which we kind of accomplished here. So while this is our backup frosting idea, what do you think of the frosting on this?
It's good. I love whipped cream, so I won't be complaining.
It is extremely hot outside today, so the whipped cream definitely works well for a more summery cake.
All right, well, I'm done. It was good.
Would you do it again?
Never.
Would you do the cake part again, not the frosting?
You're asking
The
the wrong
cake itself.
person. I never make the same cake twice.
Would you eat the pistachio cake again? Happily.
If someone gave me cake, I'd eat it. Doesn't matter what type of cake it was. Yeah,
I'm trying to get a rating for the cake itself. Let's pretend that the whipped cream frosting was our plan the entire time, that we didn't have the whole headache of trying to deal with time and uncooperative frosting and everything.
It was a 6 or a 7. It was
6
good,
or 7?
but it could have been more light. I feel like, which with pistachios maybe.
So you wanted more of like a lighter, fluffier cake, not so much of a dense cake. I do like that after grinding the pistachios, although that was a bit of a process as well, you do get a good nutty flavor in the cake itself. Any thoughts on the coffee before we go?
Coffee is
It's a good coffee.
good
I mean,
coffee.
there's not a whole lot going on with it, but it's good. Definitely comment down below. Let us know if you make this cake, if you give it the proper chill time, which frosting you do, if it works out well for you, if you want to rip all of your hair out.
Made you want to cry.
Comment down below if this cake made you cry or not. Until next time,
See you then.
bye. Mystery time.
There's a mystery.